Hi, I'm Kyle, a tired therapist.
And I'm Jackie, also a tired therapist.
And together, we are
Two tired therapists.
Welcome to the pod. Welcome back.
Welcome back to part 2.
We know that you're all tired of waiting 2 weeks.
I'm so sorry.
So we are so sorry, but not really
No,
of that.
we don't feel bad for you.
Let's just jump in.
Yeah, we know
let's just get into it.
the people have been waiting.
We know what they want.
Yes, and they want part 2, and this is where it all goes down.
This is where the party starts.
Right. You thought the first episode was crazy? Nah, bro. It's this episode.
Yeah. It's this episode. All right, let's get into it. The beginning of the end. So
yes,
the last time we left the Barnetts, Natalia was living in an apartment, and the neighbors didn't like her.
Right.
DCS had been called, but couldn't do anything because she was legally an adult. So they move her to another apartment in another city, Lafayette, in Indiana. It is a rundown apartment on the second floor.
Yes.
There are many steps that she has to get up to get to her apartment. And it's in not a great neighborhood.
No.
It's definitely, again, besides her age, not good for somebody with a disability.
No, because they show pictures, or not pictures, but they have like the video of the apartment. So like she had to go up like probably 4 or 5 stairs just to get to like the sidewalk, then more stairs to get into the house. Then from in the house, she probably had to get up a stairway of, I would say, probably like maybe 20 steps. I think one of the neighbors counted it, and it was like 30 something steps from like her apartment to like the street. Yeah. But it was funny because the Barnetts, if you're going to talk about this, I'm so sorry. The Barnetts were like, it was a block away from this learning center where she was going to get her GED. It was a 2-minute walk from a village pantry or whatever it was. Right. It was right by this place. She was like in the epicenter. So, and they left her at this apartment because Jacob, the oldest son, I guess some university in Canada was like, we want you to do your master's degree with us. So they drop her off at this apartment, and then they jet set out of there to Canada. So she's effectively by herself in a city she's never been to. She's never from where she was to Lafayette, it's probably a good like 40 minutes to an hour north of where she was.
Yeah.
She don't know no one. She knows no one.
No, exactly. So she's in this apartment. She can't reach the stove. She can't reach the microwave. Yes, the Barnetts moved to Canada because Jacob's a genius.
Allegedly. And
so Natalia's at this apartment. So a neighbor realizes that, okay, this person has been abandoned, whether she's a kid, whether she's an adult. They did a lovely interview with Eddie, if you remember Eddie, with his shirt off and his belly hanging out.
What was wrong with that man's belly button?
And his belly button, and he said,
but did you see it? It was like it looked like a fist.
It was an outie. It was actually, I think it was probably a hernia.
Okay, I was like, that had to have been a hernia because there was
definitely a hernia. A direct quote from him was, "I've got a sex offense." So Eddie, in a few words, told us who he was,
everything,
and that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
He was honest. I appreciate the honesty.
We love representation. We love Indiana. We love the Hoosier lifestyle, and that's all I'll say about that. Not really sure what he had to do with anything in the interview, to be honest, other than that.
Yeah, they didn't really. So I don't know why he said that. I don't know. I don't remember what prompted him to say that. I think he was just trying to like say, I don't want to get in trouble, because I think a lot of, so like, personally, I think the neighbors in Lafayette were much more, I don't know what the right word is. They were much more like, what the fuck is happening? Well, blue collar, but they were much more like, what the fuck is this? Like the ones in Westfield were kind of like, she's an adult. She says she's an adult. Yeah. We're just going to like let her be. But these neighbors in Lafayette were like, what the fuck is this? Like I'm
ready to fight everybody.
There was that woman who I also want to be friends with her. She was with the one with the kids in the beginning.
Oh, and all the crosses.
Yeah, and then when she told off that lawyer later, it was really funny. But
That
when
was funny.
but when she was like, I mean, they interviewed her and she was like sobbing. She was like, I didn't know, like,
Yeah,
if she goes, I
she
feel
was
so.
sweet.
Yeah, she was, and she was like, the first day she moved in, like she came, Natalia came to my door and was like, can I have a sandwich? And had no like food in her apartment, had nothing, and she goes, I just feel so bad. And everybody's failed her, and she like cried, and she seemed like actually genuinely, but like the people in Lafayette were like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah,
and that's how the lid got blown off of this thing.
yes. So Natalia ends up disappearing
Yes.
for a
Like,
couple of
yeah,
days,
like
I think.
three or
They
4 days or something like
they
that.
couldn't get a hold of her. She ends up being with a neighbor, not the one that Jackie
No.
was just talking about. The Barnetts are very upset that they are like pissed that she's with this neighbor. The neighbor was really concerned on how Natalia had been treated in her life from what Natalia told her. There was a concern because she did sign over her social security. I don't remember if it was to the neighbors or to herself, but she signed it away from the Barnetts, which they didn't like, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So all of this is happening, and Michael decides to leave Christine because she's abusive.
Yeah, it seemed like a weird. Yeah, because so she was so Natalia's in Lafayette, they're in Canada. Then this kind of blows up. She goes missing. They find her, but then this other family, I think the last name is Mann or something like that. It's
Something like that.
Cynthia, and I forget the other guy's name.
Yeah.
It's like a husband and a wife. They sign over her checks, which is weird in of itself, in my opinion, because I've seen families do this, like working with like the severely mentally ill population. Like you'll see like, a mom or a sibling will get the checks and then they'll disperse the money. And I guess that's what Michael was doing, which I thought it was weird because they never really talked, and you and I talked about this off air, but they never really talked like that he was misusing the money necessarily, if that makes sense. Like it wasn't like he wasn't
right.
They did, some of the neighbors said like her bills weren't paid or like her lights were off or something like that. There was an instance, I think it was in Lafayette, where like that they didn't switch the power over, so she had no power for like a couple of days when she first moved in. But there was no like, they never said outright if like they were like if Michael specifically was abusing the money. But yeah, it was a little it is, and they will, if you go, I mean, she's an adult, so she's got an ID that says she's 22. So she can go to any social security office and say, hey, I want to sign pay ship over to this person. It takes a while, but it happened. I mean, it's not hard to do anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So Michael moves back to Indiana and Sis is ready to spill the tea about Christine. He said, this tea is hot. I've warmed it up. I put a little milk and sugar in it for you. Get ready because I'm going to serve it.
It is, oh my God.
He admits in an interview with an investigator that he believes at this time, at the time of the interview, Natalia is 20 to 22 years old, which means he believed she was a minor when they dumped her off at the first apartment.
Right, because I think that when they finally interview him, it's like, what is it? It's like 2019, right?
It was like 20... It was probably like 2019, 2020.
Yeah. So
like that.
So it's like, so it's about seven years after the whole moving her to Lafayette incident.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. So this actually opens, because what he's really doing is trying to tell the tea on Christine, because the investigator is kind of playing him and being like, look, we want to get Christine, blah, blah, blah.
Great interrogation. Completely legal. Great strategy for this, because he read strategy. Michael like a book. It was the best thing I've ever seen. It just opened up like he was like, yeah, but Christine's like insane. She's nuts. Yeah. And I just watched it.
He got got.
Yeah, he did. He got. And he was so dumb. He was.
He did.
He should have asked for a lawyer, anyways.
And he didn't. But that's fine.
He didn't. He didn't at all.
So him admitting this opens child abuse charges for both Michael and Christine.
Yes.
Both go to turn themselves in. Goes from fetch to flop real quick. Yeah. They were flops immediately.
Big old flops.
Mama, it is war between those.
It turns into Michael versus Christine, like Kramer versus Kramer.
Right. like fight of the century, like Merriweather versus I don't know whoever. And it is on.
It is
so
it gets oogle. It gets so
oogle immediately. So all of a sudden, Michael's saying, well, Christine manipulated Natalia. He said, let me tell you about it. He said Natalia was punished for not giving up the names and locations of where she was, all of that. said Christine was physically abusive
to everyone,
Natalia,
to pretty much
to everyone,
but mostly Natalia.
And very, very weepy, right? This is when he gets very weepy.
This is the part. This is the part where they are interviewing him in current day. So it's about like 2022.
It's like 2020, yeah.
And he looks a little different. He's like lost a little weight. He's like shaved because he had a beard. He's shaved the beard. Looks better with the beard. Just gonna say it. And he's like talking about all this stuff, but he is like he vacillates between like full blown screaming. He's like, and she hit us all, and then 2 seconds later he is full blown sobbing. Like he I don't know, like he just lost everybody in his family. Then 3 seconds later he's like, I'm fine.
Right.
She is right. I just didn't get to talk to her.
She's evil.
Yeah, and she's evil,
and she deserves every letter of it.
And she is, she's earned every letter of the word evil. And I'm like, I get what you're trying to do, but that just makes you sound so weird. But he kept saying like she beat Natalia, and then at one point he like gets on the ground. He's like telling the camera, he's like, make sure you pan the camera down.
I need you to point the camera to
right.
But it's it's the drama for him because he like, I wish you could see me because he'll be like, I need you to point one of your cameras to the ground.
Yeah.
Like he's about to like he's
about to act his life out in the Shakespearean play.
Theater 401 grad school for his master's degree in
he's going for that
drama.
Oscar.
Going for the Oscar, like waiting. Do you have the camera pointing to the ground? Let me show you. Yeah. And then he reenacts Christine allegedly beating the snot out of Natalia.
Well, and he's like wailing the ground. He wails the ground so hard he hurts his own hand while he's doing this.
But then even when he's done, you could literally just see him basically be like, and scene. Like I was like, this one, it both fills my cup, but also makes me want to K my ass too, to watch him do this. Like he is too much. He is too much.
Yeah, and this is where up until this point, because this is probably like episode 3, 4 at this point, maybe 5.
Probably like 4 or 5.
So you're kind of like, okay, like they seem, and then they kind of turn it, and they're like, okay, these parents, like something, and they have like 1 or 2 episodes that are straight up like Michael versus Christine. And you're watching this, and it's like, him in the 2019 interview, like the interview that they mostly use, he's not like dramatic, he's not emotional, he's very happening.
He was just odd. Like he was odd. He was
it was a little weird. But then if you think about it, you're like, okay, he's been removed. But now it's like he's almost like SD, which he talks about like it's just, and I'm sure, and I'll just say this: if a fraction of what he's saying is true, it is pretty alarming. Sure. The whole family, and his son Jacob does corroborate quite a bit of what he says, and I don't think that's fake because Jacob. He's on the spectrum. There's not a lot of. I don't know. He didn't have a lot of emotion, but that's not atypical for somebody who's on the spectrum. Like, I don't know. I believe Jacob more than I did Michael, and he did corroborate a lot of it.
And we'll talk about it a little later, but also Jacob is traumatized. Also, Jacob has probably some PTSD, TBH.
Well,
from
the
a lot
whole
of
family
things.
Probably does, and for different reasons, for totally different reasons. But I
think the difference with Michael is, okay, where were you 10 years ago? Saying this shit while Natalia was getting abused.
Right.
I understand that's your wife. I understand, but I would like to think that
why did you not?
If Edward and I had a child and he was abusing that child, I'd be like, so it's a no. It's a no for me.
Why? Like here's the thing. Michael says the whole time he's so afraid of Christine. He's so fearful of her. She hits him. They're equally. It sounds like they had an equally domestically abusive relationship.
Yes,
because he got in the early 2000s. That one you mentioned in the last episode, that was him like hitting her. Like he did actually like physically assault her. I'm pretty sure. Trigger warning. Sorry, those posts. Sorry, but. I think she also did the same thing, but I also think she was very much more psychological because they do. I'm sure you'll talk about this, but they use like social media messages and texts between each other, and these texts are like the weirdest fucking thing I've ever read in my life.
Yeah,
one for like a married couple, icky, and then 2, they're talking about like Natalia, and like it's just like it's weird, it's creepy, it's like
they call her evil in these messages and say she deserved to be beaten.
Yeah, like it was, and Christine essentially admits on a couple different occasions through these messages that she did abuse her physically, like abuse Natalia physically. Right. Michael knew about it, didn't do anything about it. if we're going to look at through the lens of trauma, then I can understand maybe why. But then why wouldn't you like, when you go to like the doctor's office or like, let's say you take her to, school, why wouldn't you be like,
Right.
hey,
Well,
like somebody call CPS. I'm just going to tell you I can't do it because I'm scared. Like, I don't know why there was they act even knowing they went to, I don't believe that they really did, or they went and they got told shit that they didn't want to hear and then they left. They went and saw people,
and I just think,
they were like,
and TBH, I honestly think he probably wasn't innocent at the time. So I think he changed his tune because he got caught.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I think they were.
So, and that'll be more in my theory.
Sorry.
But, and like you said, Jacob, the old, I think he was the oldest. He said, my mom is not 100% innocent, but he didn't want to talk about it. Whatever.
There was are you going to talk about the scene that,
the popcorn scene, the weird popcorn scene?
No, like
where they caught him on the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was weird. Yeah, so Jacob goes and he's like, I'm done. I don't want to talk about this. And
yeah, he gets upset. They ask him a bunch of questions about Christine, and that's when he says like she's not completely innocent, but I also don't want to really like implicate her in any other things.
Right.
So he kind of like, he's in the basement. That's where his bedroom is. So he like leaves, walks up the stairs. He walks up upstairs when his dad's kind of like on a stair landing, and they're like still filming him, but he forgot to take off his mic. And he's telling his dad, he's like, I don't really want to talk about this stuff. Like, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want mom to get in trouble. And he's just like, the dad. Interestingly, Michael answers, I don't really care because, she deserves what's coming to her, which I'm like, this is your kid. And Jacob's an adult. I would wager he's probably in his early 20s at this point because he's a little older than Natalia, like when they got her, because I think he was like a couple of years older. So he's probably in his early 20s. And he's like, the dad's just like, well, she's got what's coming to her, she's evil, blah, blah, blah. He's just like, well, I don't want to talk about the stairs incident.
Right.
And he's like, well, you don't have to talk about it, but whatever.
Right. And he's trying to say like, well, you were a minor when this happened, so they can't make you talk about it, and you can't get in trouble for it. It was odd because it was one of those where you're like, this is a setup.
Well, then I'm worse, and like they don't want to talk about it, like, because that's what I thought. I'm like, maybe there was an incident in the home. That's really what I think happened, and maybe Christine didn't call for help, maybe whatever. But also, I'm also going to say one other thing about the abuse that is a question that never got answered in any way, shape, or form is. Again, Natalia is a little person. She's tiny. She's, let's just say at the time that these abusive things were happening, she was 6 years old.
Yes.
If Christina's beating her so badly, like Michael says, there's no documentation of any sort of like bruising or injuries or really anything. Not saying it didn't happen, but I'm just saying like, she is also physically disabled. I would think like she would have marks. Yeah. I feel like she would have bruises. I mean, the way that Michael did that whole like reenactment, I mean, there's no way no one would have a bruise
you would think
from
she'd
that.
Be dead.
He hurt his hand doing the reenactment. Right. Like, I don't know how. Right. So I found that to be a little sketch. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what to think about that still. Anyways, I thought I would bring that up.
So then we get to the weird popcorn scene, which has to be probably the best scene, I have to say. Do you remember the
face that whole time was just
gold. It's Michael in front of a popcorn maker.
Yeah, like a red little
at the fair.
Yeah, like the ones that roll around. Yes, me.
The little.
You can't see me, but I'm rolling like a weirdo.
She's rolling. So Jacob lives with Michael now.
Yeah.
And Michael's telling them how they reconnected over like Facebook or whatever, and Michael. Again, BFA, crying hysterically about it.
Hysterical.
I should make fun of him. Yeah, he doesn't talk to his other two kids, whatever. But like, Jacob is standing there visibly uncomfortable with the level of emotion that's happening.
I was physically uncomfortable. I
was physically uncomfortable, and he's just like chomping away on the popcorn, and then all of a sudden Michael is like, "Oh, my son," and like hugs him. And it is just like, even talking about it, I'm getting the most like
cringe.
I'm getting the ick, as the kids would say. Like, it's the ick.
Well,
fully.
And I turned to Justin. I remember the scene. I don't know if Justin remembers watching it with me. And I turned to him and I go, here's where I think maybe he is this emotional all the time, because Jacob seemed to have no reaction to it. Like, this is a normal thing that he has worked his whole life. It's been like this. And I was like, I can give credence to maybe this guy is a little.
He's like, I actually rehearsed this with my dad last night before.
I was told to like look at this. Yeah. Well, then there's that. Like, maybe he was like, I'm going to do this whole thing. I don't know though, because I just felt I felt like the reaction was like really indicative of this is how Michael is all the fucking time. Like, he's just over dramatic. He's very emotional. He's very histrionic.
Histrionic, yes.
I'm not diagnosing him, but I'm just saying that's what
Just
histrionic.
saying.
That's what.
If his therapist pointed to him and said he's histrionic, I would go.
I'd say yeah. We got that.
Yes.
We got it. We got his number. So, it's fine. But it's
weird popcorn.
That was very bizarre. It was
too much.
And then like the hug they shared was really awkward, and like poor Jacob. That's where I don't feel like it was a whole lot rehearsed, because his face was like, what the fuck do I do?
Right. What do I do?
And then he like awkwardly really, like hugged him. Oh,
Jacob is the tragedy of this whole story, because, and we'll talk about a little bit in the Barnett's parenting is the next is our next section. He really, like, they fucked him up. Like he was a very, not that he's not done or that he's not bright now, but he was a very bright child. He was supposed to go to this fancy school, and he was supposed to do all these great things, and now he lives in his dad's basement.
Well, like, they never really explained like if he works or what he does. Like, he had like dry erase boards in the background with like math problems on them. Like, they never really said like what happened, and he didn't talk about it.
He's clearly not thriving.
No, there's something like, I don't know, emotionally stunted about the whole thing. But their parenting was questionable at best.
Let's talk about that parenting, because Natalia said that the 3 boys, would punish her as well as Michael and Christine.
Yes, yeah.
I think this is where, for me, if you recall, we talked about Natalia was said to urinate on the couches, the beds, put poop on. And we talked about how she was abused. She was a 6-year-old being abused.
Yeah.
That, urinating and regression is what we would call that, is a red flag that a child is being abused. So,
well, and I don't want to spoil it for the end in any way, shape, or form. Like, at least our final thoughts is really what I mean. But that's also a very regression is a big thing. But like, some of that is also indicative of like sexual abuse and the talking about sex. And that is one thing I will say I feel like this documentary did not answer, and we can talk about it at the end, is they did not talk about a lot of the allegations made against her, like about the sexual stuff, like the kid at the Westfield apartment. They did not talk about like her and LaRue Carter being sexual with the other patients,
because that can be a sign of sexual abuse too. If I mean, it can be kids that become like sexually promiscuous or seem to be sexually more sexually mature.
Yeah, and they know and from what I guess I'll use the LaRue Carter staff, because they gave the most reports of it, but like it was a lot. It wasn't just like one instance. I mean, they were saying she was straight up propositioning other men. There was some kind of weird like clandestine veiled, like, Natalia spent a lot of time at this. There was an older guy in the Westfield apartment complex that she was seen with a lot, that she would go into his apartment for hours, that they don't know what really happened there.
Right.
I'm just going to say that was not really addressed. But some of the behaviors that she does display, yes, are 100% of you've been abused, but a lot of them point to sexual abuse, in my opinion.
And we will discuss that in our final thoughts. Don't you worry.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
I cannot wait.
So one thing that comes out is that Christine told Jacob to urinate on Natalia's bed as a punishment.
Like to get back at her.
To get back at her for peeing on things. And Jacob says, and I quote, "I felt like I'm a Nazi following orders."
Well, and he said his mom told him that one of the therapists was like, the therapist suggested that this is an appropriate.
Said you need to do this. Right.
And I was like,
no.
I literally was like, I was like,
no,
not a single therapist, not a single good therapist would ever. Right. That's like if something you would do with like an animal. Like, that's like saying, what? Like, who would?
But like, okay, if your therapist said, well, you should pee on her stuff, I would be like, well, that's a little weird. But you're telling Christine to have her other child,
right? Like,
pee on what?
Well, and what is that really proving to Natalia? Like, how would she even know who peed on her bed? Like, unless Jacob was like, I piss on your bed, bitch. Like, I mean, like, what do you like, what is that even proving to her? Like, what, I mean, like, how would she even know? Like, yeah, she's going to lay down on the bed and it's wet, but I wouldn't think it would be my oldest brother. Like,
right.
I don't know. Like, that was such
that really
pissed me off.
Well, and I think that's what again, like poor Jacob is now traumatized.
Well,
because
he oh my God, he was just like,
pissing on bed.
He was like,
because mom said I had to.
Well, and he just kept saying, he's like, he goes, it's something that I think about a lot that keeps me up at night. That I like, he's like, if Natalia's watching this, I really hope, she understands. Like, I feel, really horrible about this, and I still really regret this, and and I'm like, this poor kid. I wonder if he's ever gotten therapy, like legit therapy, because there's a lot to unpack with.
He needs to, and he's probably going to be in therapy forever. I'm sorry, Jacob, if you're listening, but Mama.
Sorry, Mama, I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
I feel, so and we've talked about it in the other episode, but we can reiterate again. The other two younger kids, because there were 3 boys and Natalia was the youngest. The other 2 boys currently live with Christine. Whereabouts, I think they said she's in Florida, or I read she's in Florida.
Probably.
So the other 2 sons have no contact with Michael or Jacob. So like Michael said like you said in the popcorn scene, the weird popcorn scene. Michael was talking about how he left Canada or wherever they were, came back to Indianapolis, and then he said he messaged all 3 of his sons on Facebook in like 2014, 2015 timeframe, I think is when he did it. And Jacob was the only one who responded. And they don't ever explain sort of how Jacob got back to Indianapolis. It doesn't sound like Jacob has a relationship with his mom, honestly.
Not a great one. No.
It doesn't sound like it's there at all. But yeah, Michael has no contact with the 2 younger sons.
I'm sure those children were used as weapons during their divorce. I'm sure.
Parental. Think about parentification and just the alien. If like I said, what Michael's saying is any shred of truth, then she probably is using them against. I mean, they're probably both using the others against each other anyway.
Absolutely.
I wonder.
No one's innocent.
No, and they don't really. Jacob did not say if he talks to his brothers or not. It
doesn't sound like it.
Didn't allude to it anyways.
So who knows what they think of their dad? Who knows, right? Like, again, no one's innocent. So about the urination, allegedly Michael didn't know. I don't know how you would not know, but that's not my business.
The only thing that he said that did happen was, I think, one of the times that Christine was like insisting that Natalia give her the names and stuff. I think it was the same night that she slept on the
She went
deck.
outside,
But like she had basically she didn't move all day because she was like, and she peed all over herself and pooped all over herself that day. That he's like, that's the only time I ever knew that she was like doing that. And I'm like, well, really? I don't know. You said you sat outside her room a couple times because like you were afraid she was going to kill. I mean, like you just didn't know these things.
Right.
I don't know. Like,
well, and how did we go from I'm scared for my life to, oh my God, she's getting so abused. So
it don't make sense.
Stories. It's, again, when you make up stories, it's hard to keep track of which ones you've told.
Bingo.
So Michael says that he was sexually abused by Christine, and during the divorce she used sex as a weapon against him and would withhold it. And so
I have a question for you. I have to ask you this question. So he, like you just said, he said the sexual abuse was not that he got raped, was not that trigger warning. It was not that he got raped.
It was not that it wasn't physical.
Not that anything. He said that the sexual abuse was that she used sex against him and that she would use it to get what she wanted. Do you, as a practicing clinician, consider that to be sexual abuse?
I don't know if I would say it's sexual abuse. I suppose you could say sexual manipulation, but maybe that's
I'm in the same boat as
hairs.
you. I do not consider that sexual abuse. To me, sexual abuse is like, I don't want to say it's physical, but I would say I don't know it sounds like manipulation. It just sounds like she's manipulating the situation. It doesn't sound
because
like
it was like she would be like, oh, I want the custody of the boys. Like, here's a picture of my tits. And he would be like, and then he would give her custody. Like, that's, I'm not even being funny.
It's funny. Well, and legitimately these pictures that she sent him, they show
nasty,
they show them, but they obviously block out all the parts. But she was like
a nasty woman.
She was, and I'm like, are you that deprived? Like, and I'm.
Yes.
Are you that deprived that you are going to take this picture from this woman who has, and I get it. Abusive situations are, we can do an episode on a later date about like abusive and intimate partner violence. But I'm like, I just don't understand how.
No.
I just don't understand. Are you that sexually starved that you are going to take a picture from your ex-wife? That's a terrible picture.
Let me ask you. You and producer Justin are getting a divorce, and he threatens you. He says, I want full custody of the dogs. Here's a picture of my wiener. can I have the picture of the dog? Would you be like, oh my God, and then give him the custody of the dogs?
Justin's face is just terrified. I would probably just
Like, would that work
I would
for
probably just
you?
type back LOL and then screenshot it and then block him, and then I'd send it to my lawyer and I'd be like, guess fucking what? I would just laugh so hard. I would be like, what the fuck is that kind of I don't even know what kind of tactic that is. Like, and like it sounds like they did, and I believe Christine and Michael had sex post like we're getting divorced.
Oh, of course they did.
But then she was sending the same. Well, then when she started doing, do you remember the part where he was like, she wasn't very tech savvy. Their cloud backed up to their computer, so she was taking like a lot of pictures of herself in long career. They showed some of them, which were just something
nasty.
Something.
They were nasty.
And
good for her.
She was like sending these pictures, so then it pop up on his computer, and then he's like, I'm just seeing all these pictures, and I'm like, are you that starved for like? And,
well, he said he got addicted to porn.
Yeah, and then right, fine. But like, I don't know. Like, I just think that that's so. But yeah, I think that was
you are not a teenage boy. Like, go wank off to Victoria's Secret in the bathroom. You'll be fine.
Right, get that Fredericks of Hollywood catalog out. And
I'm serious.
I can't imagine giving up your kids for maybe one night with your ex-wife, maybe one night.
But he did,
and
that's, again, that's not even funny. He literally, like, she wanted full custody. Here are my whatever. Here's my hoo-ha. Here's my
his kids watching this documentary now. No,
and then he said, "Oh, thank you," and gave him a lot. Like, I'm sorry. I love my boyfriend. I think he's very sexy. But if we were going through a divorce and he said, "Oh, here, do you miss this?" I'd be like, "No, I could literally go out and get a wiener anytime I want." So, like,
I'm not worried about it, and I'm not going to give up like my most prized possession, essentially. And not that kids are possessions, but let's just assume it's, let's take out kids out of it and say you have like a statue worth $1 bajillion. I'd be like, no, get out of here. Like, what?
Right.
Like, at that point,
your wiener or this statue that I love, no thanks.
Yeah, I can go out and I can download a dating app right now and have like.
But when your parents have personality disorders, sometimes hurting the parent is more important than loving the child. Put that on a pillow.
You put it on a T-shirt, and somebody needs
to
wear
that
T-shirt. To
and we're going to send one to Christine and Michael. So
they only cared about hurting each other at a certain point, and everyone in their life was collateral damage, and that is a really sad fact of this whole thing.
That's the T right there. So again, Michael says Christine was coaching Natalia on what to say, was telling her, tell everyone you're dangerous, you're crazy, you tried to kill everybody.
It's weird.
So all this starts coming out, right? Like, Michael's telling the tea, Christine, whatever, she's doing her thing. So it starts to come down to, how old is Natalia?
Right.
Can the Barnetts be charged with child neglect, child whatever, or will it have to be like adult, adult dependent, whatever. So here's where her new age comes into play. And this is where, for me, it solidified that both Michael and Christine are bitches. In the state of Indiana, you are responsible for an adopted child until the age of 21.
Yes. Yep.
They aged her to 22.
Yep.
I think they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, because it probably wouldn't take a rocket science to like Google, adoption laws. Maybe they even consulted a lawyer and they were like, what's our, I mean,
absolutely.
It was it became increasingly obvious as the documentary goes on that they, you can't say for sure because neither of them will cop to it, but they definitely knew. They definitely had somebody who knew telling them this is how you need to do it. Because in the beginning of the documentary, like you said in the last episode, like they changed her age without like a hearing, which is like unheard of. You have to somebody did something. Some lawyer must have done. And I think they did have a lawyer do the re-aging thing.
They did. They interviewed her.
And like, I mean, they had to have known. I mean, there's no way.
And they absolutely, yes.
And they were like, we'll get her an apartment. We'll put her away from us.
Right.
We're not scared of her.
And what part of my theory that I'll talk about at the end, but I think they picked this because they were trying to distance themselves, like, culpability wise, that's a big
Yeah.
word, but like
Yeah.
the culpability of their actions or the responsibility of their actions to basically say, no, look, she was an adult, she's
Right.
22, so we don't have to take care of her
Right.
and financially, blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
Like, and speaking of the doctor, they interviewed this doctor that
allegedly saw her,
and the judge had used those reports from that doctor to age her. The doctor said, well, I was only going off what Natalia was telling me, which now we've learned at this point, Natalia has been coached to say things. So like,
well, and
what?
He even said, I think, because I think they had they had the recording of the detective, like the 2019 detective going in for Michael and Christine. They had him call this doctor, and the doctor was like, I didn't even. The investigator guy was like, how did you get 22? Like, how did you get? He said, well, that was what Natalia used, but I didn't even think she was 22. He even said that. He's like, I didn't even think she was 22. And the investigator asked him a different question. I can't remember what the question was, and he was just like, I never even really said that. And like, it essentially was like, how did you determine this? Like, did you go off records? Did you go off this? And he was just like, I didn't even say she was 22. I never said that. He's like, I never wrote that in the report. I never admitted that. And then so I'm like, how did you? So did they doctor a report? Did they take a document and a medical record and Photoshop something? And I mean, it's not that hard to do, but I mean, like, did they say that this
sketchy
guy said
business? And
so yeah, it was. It's a lot, but
yeah.
Anyways,
let's take a break.
Yes,
and then we will wrap up the story of Natalia Grace with Michael's trial.
Oh my God. Yes.
We'll be right back. We're back, ready to wrap up some Natalia Grace. So it all comes down to Michael's trial, and a big question still is her age.
Yeah,
because it's important for the prosecution to show that she was a child,
right,
and that they knew she was a child, so that they could hit with some child neglect charges. So they go back again to find bio mom in the Ukraine and get some of that DNA.
Yes.
These tests confirm that Natalia's birth year was 2003, which was on her birth certificate.
Yes.
So being 6 or 7 when she was adopted, and then that would make her around the age of 10 when all of this apartment stuff was happening.
Yeah. Yes. She was like, so when they got her to the first Westfield apartment, I think she technically was like 8 or 9, and then when they moved her to Lafayette, she was like 9 or 10.
9 or 10.
Well, and side note, you probably want to talk about it just because of time, and it's not really relevant to the rest of this, but the birth mom story is very sad, like really like sad. And they also had they had records from the hospital in Ukraine that confirmed 2000. Like, I mean, there was no way that it was
and mom
faked.
They said that mom would have been 10.
Right. Mom was born in 79.
If Natalia was born in 1989.
Yeah.
So not right.
Yeah.
So Michael's lawyers argued that these tests aren't valid. We don't know who did these tests. Like, they're totally lying. The judge agreed with Michael's lawyers and deemed that Natalia's age could not be discussed during Michael's case, meaning she would only be referred to as an adult.
Right.
And an adult when all this stuff was happening, and
they couldn't say the word child. They couldn't say, because they were charging him with like neglect of a dependent with like a disability or something. It's like a different kind of neglect charge. Right.
So now he couldn't be charged with any of the child neglect stuff. It would just be that the dependent with a disability or whatever.
Yeah.
Going into the trial, start to find out that Christine, she's been having affairs, whatever. And then one Mr. Freddie Gill comes into.
Okay, I didn't know if you were going to talk about him. I'm so glad you
are. Freddie.
Yes,
we got to talk about Freddie.
I would love to get a beer with Freddie and just chitty chat with him one day.
The stories.
Oh my god.
So he was a little person who lived in Indiana somewhere.
Yes.
And Christine had reached out to him.
Yeah.
I guess he's famous. He's kind of like a famous
he's got like a famous person. He did like oh my god,
like country music or something.
Yeah, he did music, and then I think did he do wrestling or something? He did something like
maybe he did.
He did a couple different things where he was
No.
nope. Justin's shaking his head.
Justin's
I don't know.
saying no.
He was famous, and he achieved kind of like local celebrity, sort
local
of
yeah.
a little bit more than that. Anyways, yeah, Christine reached out to him on Facebook when she found yeah. Go ahead.
Asking about Natalia, like saying that they just they had a little person, and he says, Freddie says that these conversations then became very sexual, and he did show.
He was an honest guy. I will say he's like our friend Eddie in Lafayette, who was just like, I mean, he was very like, you know what? Yeah, we were sexting. Who cares?
Like, yeah, and he was like, yep, I told her I eat pussy and do it really great, and
I know he was,
made a woman come 7 times. Like he was just telling the tea, and I was like, oh, okay, this is great, thank you.
Yeah,
and it was about at this point that I said, everyone in this story is a freak. Everyone's a freak, and I can't stand it.
Yeah, it was a lot.
So tea coming out about Christine. Michael by this point has found himself another wife, so that's great.
Yeah,
and so here comes the trial. So the focus for Michael's team is to prove that Natalia was a capable adult, and they did this by showing clips of her doing things, which I thought was so gross because
it was
they're showing her, clearly a child, running across like a street, and they're like, well, see, she can run, and I'm like,
no, I was like, what is this really showing?
But her legs are like bent inward, and she's like hobbling. She's got about 18 inches of padding between her foot and the road, so I'm like, what the fuck? And then they're showing her like pulling the trash can at her apartment again, where she's probably 8 years old.
Well, and she's
like, oh, well,
the trash can's bigger than she. Yeah, she's trash can's bigger than she is.
Like,
yeah, I was kind of grossed out by what they were showing.
So gross.
And then they said that they were going to ask her while she was on the stand what year she was born, because legally she had to say 1989.
Right.
So they were like,
and they did.
Yeah,
they did ask her.
They did. Yeah.
They did ask her. So that was gross. So the jury had no idea the whole age debacle, right? They just knew that she was older, and so they would question Natalia and say, like, well, do you remember, in 2005 when so and so happened? And she'd be like, well, no, because she was like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So it's like she looks like a liar because they don't know all about this age stuff.
Yeah.
So of course, Michael is found not guilty of any of the charges.
Yeah.
But what's funny is
barely, because they interview one of the jurors for the documentary.
They interview one of the jurors, and the jurors basically said, well, we all thought he was guilty, but because we couldn't, there was certain evidence we were told not to consider. Yeah. We had no choice but to make him not guilty. So he got out by the skin of his teeth.
And it was so funny because in the documentary they're showing him like when the verdict comes out, he's like, they know I'm not guilty, they know I'm blah blah blah. And then you watch this juror this interview, and she was like, barely. She goes, everybody said he was guilty, but based on the charges that he was being charged with, we could not find him guilty. It was, the tea was spilled, and I loved it.
The tea was spilled. It was burning everybody. It was very spicy, and of course he's crying, right? He comes out of the courroom. He's like holding on to his wife, like crushing her into his bosom, and he's just like, they do.
One of the lawyers next to him, Justin commented on them when we watched. It's like one of the lawyers next to him was just like scrolling, like, Jesus fucking Christ! It was
get
so
me out of
funny.
here. You could tell those lawyers were like, what
he was like, they're like my best friends. It was so weird. It was like the weird boundary,
which is diagnostic criteria of histrionic personality disorder, when your boundaries and your relationships are sometimes
he was saying
you're closer to people than you are.
Right. He was saying his main lawyer was like they were best friends, and that they were they were like,
no, you probably
gave him with his life.
You gave him a $50,000 retainer. Yeah, so God, I would be anyone's best friend if you gave me a $50,000 retainer. So Michael says he and Natalia had a cute little moment after the trial. That made me want to
tell this moment, and then I'm going to ask you a question. Tell this moment.
Please. And so he said, so after he's not guilty, he's Lord and Savior, whatever. He says he and Natalia kind of lock eyes, and it's kind of like a bashful locking of the eyes. Yeah. And he said she gives him a little wave, and he gives a little wave back, and he mouths something to her like, I know this is hard.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know this is hard, or like, this is hard.
And she just kind of looks at him
and like nods or something.
Something about he knew she forgave him or something. And I was like, no.
Do you believe this happened? Because I do not believe this
No,
happened at
no.
all.
I bet when they said not guilty, she probably scooted boogied right out of that courtroom and said,
Yeah.
"Fuck this."
I would have too. Yeah, because there was another big debate
no.
that we don't have to get
Well,
into.
did it happen in his head? Maybe.
Probably.
Right. Did it happen in reality?
No. Well,
Probably
and
not.
another big thing that like it's too much to get into, but they do talk about it a little bit in the documentary, is how they were possibly going to try Christine and Michael together, and then they decided not to, and Michael was going to go first. So they kind of used Michael, and they used Michael's trial sort of as like a dry run, the prosecution did, which another thing that we can't get into because of time and Justin will kill us, but is the lawyer, so they had like Christine's lawyer, the prosecution, and like the different witnesses and the different people they interviewed. And those were the funniest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. Some of those interviews with the doctor, are you going to talk about that, or do you want me to talk about that really quick?
No, I didn't. No, we can talk about it.
So there's so yeah, he's not guilty. So like they were treating Michael's trial as a dry run for Christine's, but they also figured like Michael could potentially testify against Christine in her trial, which was basically what was going to happen essentially.
Right.
So they show little clips of Zoom meetings, because this is all kind of happening during the pandemic, obviously. And Christine's lawyer is like, I wish I could have been there. Anyways, so there's a scene where they're interviewing one of the doctors that examined Natalia when she was a kid. And it's a spinal specialist that they must have taken her to, when they got her. And he's basically, because he basically said her growth plates were open when she got x-rayed, and that was like 2009, 2010 time frame or whatever. And so the doctor was saying, when your growth plates are closed, you're an adult because you can't grow anymore. Hers were open, so therefore she was a child. And Christine's lawyer went ham. And this doctor is basically just like, I'm literally telling you that this was a child because her growth plates were open. And the Christine's lawyer started saying some stuff, and he's like, well, I guess, and the doctor goes, well, I guess you're not interested in the truth. And the Christine's lawyer loses his fucking marbles and is like, what do you mean I'm not interested in the truth? She's an adult. She's a full-blown adult. She was born in 1989. And like the prosecutor is like, oh my God. And like it was just like some of those videos of that is worth just solely watching for the documentary just because of that. Because there's another one where one of the neighbor that we mentioned in Lafayette, who was like kind of crying and upset, and the mom of like, I think she's like 4 or 5 kids, she gets pissed at the lawyer because he starts saying something, and she says something kind of along the same lines of like, well, you're just not interested in the truth. And he goes, excuse me, what do you mean I'm not interested? And then the prosecutor goes, well, she's like, I forget what her name was, but she's like, she goes, this is his job not to, and then he gets pissed at the prosecutor, and he's like, I can't believe you would say that I'm not interested. I mean, it was mess, but that was the definitive.
But it was all around the age stuff though, because again, they were telling the doctor, like, you can't go up on the stand and say she was a kid. And he was like,
but her growth plates were open. Like that,
and they were like,
it
doesn't matter. She's like, it was fucked up. So anyway. Whatever. Michael's innocent, living his life, rah, rah, rah. Now, here's the kind of the last thing that happens. And this will lead to my theory about what happened. So we find out that Christine was trying to pimp out Natalia to Freddie.
Yes, she was.
Was trying to get Freddie and Natalia to go on a date.
Yes.
Again, Natalia was a
saying
child.
she was an adult, not when she was like 6. Well, she was a child the whole time, but this was after she got re-aged, so she was an adult or whatever.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Right. But then Freddie made some allegations against Michael. We don't know what they are because
it's pretty obvious. You can guess what they are.
You can. Well, I think you could assume. But so they go to show Michael this interview with Freddie, and still dramatic. And he's like, "I don't care what he has to say. We've said yes to so many things for this documentary.
You've pushed to me and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm done. This is officially the last thing I'm going to do for you all, blah, blah, blah." And they were like, listen,
and the next time I say no, I mean no. Like, I was like,
well, and the documentary crew, this is where I'll give them major credit, because they didn't have to say shit. They were like, listen, this guy said something. We feel like you need to know what this is happening. So we're going to show you this. And then Michael's like, well, I might just break your laptop. And I'm like,
he's like, whose laptop is this?
Yeah.
I'd like to know because I'm going to break it.
Yeah.
And they were like, please don't.
Yeah. And so, but they were like, you need to see this, like just for your own. And like, and
even his lawyer's
sitting there. Yeah. And the lawyer's like, yeah, just play it. Like, we probably need to look. So then they play this little clip of Freddie. I'll let you describe what kind of is said or what's in it.
They don't show it, that he like starts to say something about Michael and then they cut it off. But clearly, it was a serious allegation of probably like sexual abuse.
Yeah, they were saying
or
that Christine.
molestation.
Yeah, he pretty much was saying, he goes, Christine told me that she had caught Michael, and then it like he slams the
And then
laptop
and
shut,
he's
and then
like,
he
no,
freaks out.
I don't care. Blah 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 blah.
And
So we don't know for sure,
but it's definitely it's heavily implied that there was it was a sexual, like he was
if it
sexually
was
abusing
anything
Natalia.
else, why would it matter?
Yeah.
So my whole theory about this is that Michael, or maybe one of the kids, I don't know, somebody molested or sexually assaulted Natalia and got caught, and this was supposed to be a cover-up that went sideways fast.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
I'm with you. I think she was. I don't know who did it. I don't know either.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was.
I don't know if it's like a JonBenet Ramsey thing. Yeah. Like the brother did it, God. Or
and
like dad did
I love
it.
I mentioned that. Yes. I think she also got sexually abused. I don't know if it was with the Barnetts. I don't know if it was prior to the Barnetts and like the behaviors came out with them, and then they thought they were going to get blamed for it, so they did all this weird stuff to try to cover it up. I don't know. Maybe. I think she was sexually abused. She has no memory of really hardly anything. They do show her in like the forensic interviews with like an interviewer, and she kind of is like, it's hard to believe her too a little bit, but it's not that I think she's genuinely lying. I think she just has no memory of any of this stuff. Like they ask her, did your parents ever beat you? And she's like, no, I never was beat. I never, that never happened.
Right.
But then a couple minutes later, she's like, well, I did get, Christine did hit me, a couple times. Right. Like, I mean, it's just kind of like that. But yeah, I agree. I think she was unfortunately really terrible for her, and her justice has failed her very terribly in every way, at every turn for every person.
Can you imagine being 9 years old? You are fully 9 years old, and then your parents come to you and say, hey, now you're 22. And
here's an apartment.
In an apartment.
She doesn't know how to cook. She doesn't know how to clean. She doesn't know how to bathe herself. She doesn't know activities of daily living. It's very obvious. I mean, and then you see the pictures, and if you watch this documentary, you'll be like, oh my God.
Right.
Because like I said, you're watching this and you're like, the parents are like, she's an adult, and you're like, wow, she is an adult. And then when you rewatch it, like when you watch the later episodes, when they're like, no, she really was a kid. I mean, she really does look like a little kid. Like she doesn't look her age. She looks a little older. And I told Justin, I wondered if she's got some sort of like, pituitary gland thing also, because like maybe she did develop a little bit earlier. Like that has
a rare genetic disorder that we probably don't know a lot about. So
right. I mean,
how do we know that it affects everyone the same? Maybe she does look older.
Right. And
like what?
Like I said earlier, I felt like the biggest thing that they never really got into in the documentary, they never really explained, or they never even tried to sort of like deal with, was her sexual behavior towards other people.
Yeah.
They never really talked about that ever again. Once everything was said, they never addressed it again. And I just thought that was weird. And then that's when I was like, well, I think really she was abused, because that really is like, she displayed all of the really big telltale signs of that kind of stuff.
The like the urinating, the regression, the sexual
talk and sexual behaviors, and like
even like the way she would treat the neighbors and like go into their house, like the boundary issues.
Yeah, like
I mean, once she was probably lonely as fuck because she's 9 years old and living
by
in this
herself.
Apartment.
Yeah, doing nothing all day, like watching TV, like.
So she doesn't. Yeah, she's a child.
Yeah.
So
you believe she is born 2003? You believe she was a child during all of this?
Yes,
same,
100%. Yeah,
same,
absolutely. They confirmed it with the DNA. I believe that's all true. The mom. The interview with the mom was very genuine. I don't know. She has no skin in the game to lie. Well, what is she going to get?
Well, and it was so sad because she was just like, when I gave birth to her, they said she was a dwarf, and like I couldn't.
Right. She was going to die. So.
Well, and she was like in her early-ish 20s or something. She was like 24 or something. They're like, don't, we'll take her. Don't ruin your life basically for her.
Right. You have another daughter. She was like,
it's
fine.
She cried and she was like, I wish I'd never given her up. And I was like, oh my God. And then she was in Ukraine, and currently Ukraine's in war with Russia, and they basically her interview got cut because of all this stuff happening there, which was sad. Right. But I mean, that was pretty tragic too. It's so sad. She still lives, and Natalia still lives with the family she met in Lafayette. I don't know if they still live there. They don't really just. I've seen a couple different places where she lives. She still lives in Indiana, from what I can tell.
Right. Yeah.
They ended up dropping the charges against Christine not that long
Yes.
ago, like 6 months ago.
I think in like March of 2023. Yeah,
Yeah.
Christine's case got dismissed for lack of evidence.
Yeah.
So both Michael and Christine got away. Yeah, I fully believe she was 6
they
years
basically
old
did. Yeah.
when they adopted her, and that she was probably 8 when they moved her to an apartment, and probably 9 when they moved her to Lafayette. All the abuse, all of the videos they showed of her. I mean, interrogating that 6-year-old. Where have you
like
been?
a little
Who do you know?
kid. I mean, she's just kind of got this look of like, why are you being shitty to me? Why are you like? It's just it's a little sad.
So that's the curious case of Natalia Grace for you, everybody. You should definitely still go watch the documentary because
there's
I'm
a
sure
lot.
there's things that I left out but it's crazy is like putting it nicely.
Yeah, it's a really good case, I think, to highlight, like almost like this is not what I'm saying they had, and I'm not diagnosing these people, but it's almost like a shared delusion. Like they all were they were all under this like sort of like she's an adult, and like they convinced a lot of people that she was an adult, and like I said, like the neighbors in Westfield, like she went up to people and was like, I'm 22 and I'm an adult and I look like a child and I'm not really a child. And like, I mean, it's a complicated tapestry of a lot of different, like, the weavings are so strange. I don't know how, like, I mean, that's really what it is. It's so complicated.
Well, and I think you're right. I mean, if she came up to you and you didn't know any better and she's I'm 22, you'd be like, oh, well, she has a rare genetic disorder, so I guess that makes sense.
And she's a little person, like she's got dwarfism, she's got this rare type, like, I mean,
but that's where I think like Christine definitely. I mean, I guess we shouldn't say that because a lot of the story comes from Michael's point of view. But they knew more than they let on, and I think they use that to their advantage.
Yeah, well, and I think if they're saying, if we're gonna pretend like she wasn't sexually abused, which I will do that for about 3 seconds, but even if she was too hard for them to handle, like there was so many other options to them that they did not use, and instead they took this strange, dumb route to get to where they got for no real reason.
No, like they had the privilege and the resources to access literally any other option. It wasn't like they were poor and couldn't afford it.
No, and I will say this that we didn't mention, but we probably should, is that they talked to, they didn't interview the family that Natalia's with, the Mann family, but they asked them, have you had any issues with her? Has she, held a knife to you? And they said, nope, she's been a great, loving part of our family. We love her. She's like a kid to us. She's our kid. We don't, she's never done anything. She's been loving towards her siblings. We've never had any problems with her, ever.
Yeah.
None of the problems that the Barnetts had.
Because I'm sure many of those were probably lies.
Well, yeah, I would wager probably 50% of what the Barnett said about her happened. At least 50% was not true.
Right. Or blown out of proportion.
Right. Exaggerated.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, on that note, I do have a quick little fetch or flop.
Good.
It's just a quick one, just to maybe get us out of
this weird,
out of the darkness, and into the light.
That was real dark sided.
It's baby names.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So, fetch or flop baby names.
Sure. Okay.
So the first one.
Oh God.
Nevaeh.
Flop,
which is heaven spelled
flop,
backwards.
Flop.
Yeah, it's a flop for me.
I'm so sorry for named Nevaeh. I don't like it.
Yeah, sorry if any of you. No, I was very conscious. I don't think we know anyone named this, but if you are, so sorry. Apple.
A flop. I remember when Gwyneth Paltrow named her daughter that, and I don't know how old I was at the time, and I was like, wow, that's a dumb name. I'm so sorry, but that was terrible.
Gwyneth Paltrow gets a big F for flop because she is a big flop. Yeah. So, Christmas.
Flop. Why would you name your kid that? Flop. I'm so sorry, but flop. I mean,
flop.
What do you call them? I mean, I guess if it's a girl, you could say, if it's a boy, you could say Chris. If it's a girl, you could say Chrissy. If you're gender neutral, I guess you could do Chris either way, but
yeah.
Why
but
would
then
you
you have to tell people like,
why would you do
like, oh, my legal name's Christmas. Unless you had like, I don't know, like if your last name was like Jingle, Christmas Jingle, okay, maybe like that'd be
Sleigh
cool.
Or something like that. Christmas Sleigh.
That's
just setting up your kid to change their name as soon as they turn 18. Really,
and
I mean,
be made
truly.
Fun of, and be made fun of by two therapists who have their own podcast.
Right. Why would you name Happy Birthday Christmas? You'd be like, what the fuck?
What the fuck? That doesn't even make sense.
Right. Christmas has a birthday.
Roman. You also have fine.
Fine. I'm gonna say fine. I had a professor in grad school whose first name was Roman, and he was pretty cool. Okay. So I will give it. That's fine. I don't.
I have to say Fetch. I do like the name
Yeah, I
Roman,
don't
so
hate
I'm gonna
it.
go. Yeah. Stormy. Oh, do you know a Stormy? Oh,
No,
so
I
sorry.
don't.
Oh,
I feel like I knew one when I was a kid. I think it's fine. I don't just type Daniels in the chat. That's kind of what I thought first, and I thought of Stormy, Kylie Jenner's daughter, and that's why I laughed.
ugh,
I don't
yeah,
hate it. But I don't like it either. It's like it's fine. I don't. I think I don't know. It's fine.
yeah.
I don't think it's
Okay.
a flop, but it's fine. What do you think? Flop?
I think it's a flop. Stormy. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think I have this theory. Any noun, any kind of noun that you name your child, it's a no for me.
It's a no for me. Yeah.
It's a no for me.
Yeah.
Justin.
Flop.
Yeah, it's a flop
Big
for
ol'
sure.
flop.
Big old flop. Any unique spelling of a popular name. So like
Uh,
Michael, but you spell it Michaelle
oh,
or something.
like if you're like Kelly, it's like Kelleigh.
Eigh. Yeah.
Ooh, I think it really depends, but I'm gonna go with flop. Um, that's what I do in The Sims. Like when I run out of like names, I'll be like, if like it auto generates like Kelly, I'll like spell it weird because I'm just like it is
I'm
like
sorry.
I it, true story. I just named one of the kids in my Sims save Emily, but spelled it Emaleighh, like
I
Emma.
hate it.
Emily came up and I was like, I'll make it weird.
I agree with you. I
I
think
think it's fine, but I think it just depends on the context.
you it's a slippery slope. Like you have
Yeah.
to pick the right name and the right spelling. Like if you're doing like I don't know if it's like K and you do
Yeah.
KAYAGA, like no.
Yeah.
But if it's like Emily and you do like EMILEE, okay, maybe that's okay,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah, it's fine.
Xavier.
Flop. I don't like that name. I really don't. I've never liked it. Why?
I think it's fine. It reminds me of like Professor Xavier from
Yeah, I think
X-Men,
of like
so
Xavier
that's what I go
University or
to.
something.
Right,
It's
right.
fine.
Olivia.
I think it's fine. I used to not like it when I was a kid. I did not like the name Olivia, but now I think it's actually a really pretty name.
I
That
think it's
you can
fine.
nickname it pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's fine. And then last one, Noah.
I'll go Fetch. I like Noah.
Okay.
I think I know it's super popular now. I have a friend who just named their kid Noah, but
yeah, actually, those last two, those are the most popular baby names for boys
yeah.
and girls for 2023, Olivia and Noah. But
Yeah.
I think Noah's fine too.
Yeah,
So
I don't mind it. It's not the worst name I've ever
yeah,
heard.
could be worse. Yeah,
Could have
so
Justin, I guess.
baby names. Bet your flop.
Yeah. Oh God, I didn't know where that was going. Now I got some new names for my sons.
Christmas
apple.
Stormy.
I have never done that before. That's like pure chaos. I watch videos of people who will literally like name their kid like test tube. I think that's hilarious.
I looked up some and I didn't even put them on here because I'm like, these can't all be flops. But people they go wild now. People really
there's a subreddit called oh God, it's like name. It's got a weird. It's like names, but it's like name. I want to say this is horrible, but I think it's like name circle jerk or something like that, where people like put like they like I don't like the name of it, but that's what it is, and it comes up on my For You page sometimes, and it's like people with like pictures or whatever of like kids' names, and like some of them are like it's like Nevea, but you spell it like so strange, or it's like the kid's name is Tom, but it's like spelled so strangely. Like there was one, I can't remember what it was, but it was spelled, you couldn't even, it was like Erica, but do you ever see that meme way back in the day of the woman named Erica, but it's spelled AIRWRECKA or whatever? That's what they post in it, and I'm like, and they're doing it on purpose. They're like, I want my kid to be unique, and I'm just like, you're also setting them up for a lifetime of like basically everyone mispronouncing their name for one, and two, like them probably getting made fun of for it. I'm just
unique people get made fun of.
Yeah,
so
it's not. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Or it's like Elon Musk's kid that has like letters and
it's
shit
like
in
that
it.
blah blah whatever they.
I don't even know what it is.
I don't know. They talked about how you pronounce it, and it's like it's weird. It's like blah blah or something like that. I don't know. Don't call me on that.
We'll just go with that.
It's like a symbol. Like, what do you call? It's like when Prince went by a symbol. Like everybody called him the artist. Like, why would you do
the artist formerly known as
Prince?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, why would you like? That is different. But I'm saying, like, why would you do that to a kid? Why would you give your kid like a symbol? I mean, that's
Because you're a freak.
Yeah.
That's the T. Because you think you're cool and you're not.
And that's the T, sis.
And that's the T, sis. So on that note, please email us at twotiredtherapists@gmail.com.
If you didn't like anything that we said, please be specific.
TWO. And please subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us 5-star reviews and leave us positive reviews only.
Thank you. We are contractually obligated to.
Yeah.
Can you say it right?
Our contract that pays us $0.
$0. We were contractually obligated by producer Justin to say all those things. So, but seriously, please leave us a review. We will read it on the air, maybe.
Yes.
If it's a hater review, we will read it, definitely.
So, on that note, stay tired.
And petty.